because I was so surprised that somebody would talk like that, poison your wife, kill your wife, all things that I had never been exposed to.
November 1998. Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. Julie Jensen sits down at her desk and writes a letter. She doesn't show it to her husband. She doesn't show it to her sons. She seals it in an envelope. She walks it next door to her neighbors, Ted and Margaret. Her instructions are simple. If anything happens to me, give this to the police. 3 weeks later, on December 3rd, Julie Jensen is found dead in her own bed. She is 40 years old. Her husband says he found her that way. Her neighbors remember the envelope. They do exactly what she asked. They hand it to investigators. Inside is a letter addressed to police, naming a suspect, her own husband. Julie didn't know it at the time, but she had just written the last thing she would ever say. If you're watching this from your city, your country, wherever you are right now, type it in the comments, because what you're about to watch is a case where the most important witness only gets to speak after she's gone. This is a true case involving the death of a mother, and it includes details some viewers may find distressing. Viewer discretion is advised. In her letter, Julie wrote something else. She wrote that she would never take her own life, not with 2 young sons at home. They were everything to her, she said.
Mr. Jensen, it is the sentence of the court that your custody be committed to the Department of Corrections for confinement in the Wisconsin state prisons without possibility of parole for the remainder of your life. You may be seated.
So, when investigators opened the file on her death, why did the question of suicide come up at all? Julie Griffin grew up in Wisconsin, one of 6 children, raised in a big, noisy family that taught her how to take care of people. In 1981, she was working at a Sears in Oshkosh. So was a young man named Mark Jensen. They started talking, then dating. They stayed together all through college. In 1984, they married. They settled into Pleasant Prairie, a quiet, upscale stretch of homes near the edge of Lake Michigan. The kind of neighborhood where everyone knows everyone. Julie wasn't just a housewife waiting in the background. She held a Series 7 brokerage license. She worked as an administrative assistant at a financial firm. She understood numbers. She understood paperwork. She understood how to keep a record. Then, in 1990, their first son, David, was born. Julie made a choice. She left her career to raise him. A second son, Douglas, followed not long after. She kept a day planner. She wrote everything down. Friends remember her as warm and meticulous. The kind of mother who never missed a school event, who left little notes of encouragement on the calendar for her boys to find in the morning. But underneath that life, something else was sitting quietly. In the early 90s, Julie had a brief affair with a coworker. She told Mark herself, face to face. She spent years afterward trying to repair what it broke between them. Friends who knew the marriage say that affair never really left the house. It stayed there, unspoken, unforgiven. Then, years later, strange things began appearing. Pornographic images, left on the family's cars, in the yard, tucked into the garage. The phone would ring late at night, and when Julie answered, there was nothing on the other end, just silence. She started keeping a log, every incident, every date, every detail written down the same way she wrote down everything else in her life. She never found out who was responsible, or at least, that's what she told herself. Mark Jensen ran the Racine branch of a brokerage firm. To colleagues, to neighbors, he was the picture of competence, polished, in control. The kind of man people trusted with their money. By 1998, Mark was already deep into something else, an affair with a coworker named Kelly Labonte. It had started before Julie died. Weeks after his wife's death, Labonte moved into the family home. 4 months later, when police asked Mark who she was, he had an answer ready. "Just a friend," he said. He married her. There was something else circling Mark that fall.
But she did write this letter, and she gave it to her next-door neighbor, Ted Voigt, and she said, "If anything happens to me, give this to the police." And he gave it to the police on December 4th. This letter was written by Julie Jensen. Pleasant Prairie Police Department, Ryan Cosman, Detective Ratsburg. I took this picture, and I'm writing this on Saturday, November 21st, 1998.
A former colleague named Ed Klug remembered a work conference in November of 1998. The two men were talking. Mark brought up his wife. He said he hated her. The comments went further than that. Dark enough that Klug told his own wife what he'd heard. Klug never went to the police. Years later, he would describe that decision with visible regret. On the morning of December 3rd, Mark called his office. He wasn't coming in, he said. His wife was sick. A colleague told him to call a doctor or take her to the emergency room. Mark did neither. He stayed home, and he watched. The afternoon of December 3rd, Mark Jensen called 911. He told the dispatcher he'd found his wife, dead in their bed. When first responders arrived, they noted the position of her body, face down, one arm pinned beneath her, her nose pressed to one side. There was no obvious sign of violence, nothing that obviously pointed to a crime. Mark had an explanation ready. Julie hadn't been feeling well for days, he said. She'd just been prescribed an antidepressant. That morning, he told investigators, she'd lost motor control. She could barely move. He said she asked him not to call for help. So he didn't.
You had to do something to cause her death, Mark. You're the only person that was there, and you're the only person that could have done anything. This is what you're right. Me and Officer Rothkopf. It's her handwriting, right?
He told police he never once picked up the phone. The cause of death came back undetermined. No clear answer. No clear crime. On paper, there was nothing yet to investigate. Police seized the family's home computer anyway. Standard procedure. Something to rule out before they closed the file. The next day, two neighbors walked into the police station. Ted and Margaret Voigt. They were carrying an envelope. The same one Julie had handed them weeks earlier with the same instruction. Open this if something happens to me. Something had happened to her. Investigators read what was inside, and from that moment, they had a theory of the case. They believed Mark Jensen had killed his wife. What they didn't have was proof. The toxicology screen came back clean. Nothing in Julie's system pointed to foul play. No poison. No clear cause of death at all. A letter naming a suspect wasn't enough to build a murder case. Investigators needed evidence that would hold up in a courtroom. It would take them 4 more years just to bring charges, and another 6 after that before the case ever reached a jury. The case sat untouched for years. Then investigators went back to the family computer. What they found inside changed the direction of everything. In October of 1998, someone using the Jensen home computer searched for drugs, for poisoning, for botulism, late at night, hours when the house should have been asleep. In November, the searches turned more specific. Suicide, physician-assisted suicide, toxicology. Page after page, read in the dark, while a wife and 2 young sons slept down the hall. On the morning of December 2nd, the day before Julie died, someone searched for Paxil, the same antidepressant Mark told police his wife had just been prescribed. On the morning of December 3rd, someone in the house searched for ethylene glycol poisoning, the main ingredient in antifreeze. investigators ordered a second round of toxicology testing. This time, they found what the first test missed: ethylene glycol in Julie's blood, in her stomach, in her urine. The levels told a story the first test never could. This wasn't one dose, taken once. The poison had built up in her system over several days, administered in stages, not all at once. That detail mattered more than any single search term. A single dose could be explained away. Days of buildup could not. Investigators now had a working theory. Mark had poisoned his wife gradually, with no one calling for help, but buried inside that same search history was something else. Something that had nothing to do with Antifreeze or Paxil or the final days of Julie's life. Something that stretched back years before any of it began. For years, this was an unsolved case inside the unsolved case. Someone had been harassing Julie. Pornographic images left on her car, in the yard, in the garage. Hang-up calls to the house, late at night, year after year. Police investigated at the time. They never found who was responsible. The trail went cold long before Julie ever died. Then, at the second trial in 2023, digital forensics opened the file back up. Investigators traced a fake email address. The name on the account read Jensen. It had been used to send pornographic material, and it was the same address Mark had used to email Kelly Labonte, the co-worker he was sleeping with. The anonymous harasser was never anonymous at all. It was Mark, not a jilted ex-lover of Julie's, not a stranger with a grudge. Her own husband running a campaign against her for years, inside her own home, while sleeping beside her at night. Investigators came to believe it served a purpose. Every incident pushed Julie closer to looking unstable, anxious, paranoid. A woman whose mental state could later be questioned if anyone ever needed it questioned. Julie kept a log of every incident, dates, details, times. She wrote it all down, the same careful way she wrote down everything else in her life. She documented every move he made against her. She just never wrote down his name. By 2002, prosecutors believed they finally had enough. They charged Mark with first-degree intentional homicide. It would take 6 more years to get him in front of a jury. The reason was the letter, and a constitutional fight that was about to climb all the way to the highest courts in the state and the country. Mark was charged in 2002. He wasn't tried until 2008, 6 years, almost entirely because of one piece of paper, Julie's letter. Under the Sixth Amendment, a defendant has the right to confront the witnesses against him. Julie was dead. She couldn't take the stand. She couldn't be cross-examined. Mark's attorneys argued the letter should never reach a jury. If it came in, they said, he'd be convicted by a voice he couldn't challenge. Prosecutors fought back with a legal doctrine called forfeiture by wrongdoing. The idea is simple. A defendant cannot benefit from his own crime by silencing the person who would have testified against him. The fight went all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The court agreed with prosecutors. The letter came in. At trial, jurors heard Ed Klug describe the conversation at that work conference. The comments about hating his wife. Then came Aaron Dillard, a man who had shared a cell block with Mark years earlier. Dillard testified that Mark confessed to him behind bars. He said Mark told him exactly how it ended. The poison was working too slowly, so Mark finished it himself. The jury deliberated for more than 30 hours, longer than most. Then they reached a verdict. Guilty, first-degree intentional homicide. Mark Jensen was sentenced to life in prison. No chance of parole, ever. For Julie's family, after a decade of waiting, this finally looked like an ending. It wasn't. 15 years after the first verdict, a federal judge vacated Mark's conviction. The letter, once again, was the reason. This time, a court ruled its admission had violated his constitutional rights beyond repair. Mark would face a jury again, but not with the same case. The second trial began in January 2023. The letter was gone. So were 2 voicemails Julie had left with a local police officer, naming Mark as her first suspect if anything ever happened to her. Prosecutors had to rebuild the case from what remained. The digital forensics, the harassment campaign, the computer searches, Ed Klug's testimony about that work conference. And then, one witness no one expected, Kelly Labonte, the woman Mark had the affair with, the woman he married after Julie died. They had since divorced, and she agreed to testify for the state. The defense held its position. Julie had died by suicide, they argued. She had planted evidence to frame her own husband on her way out. For the jury to believe that, they had to believe something else first. That a mother who wrote she would never leave her sons had secretly poisoned herself, in stages over several days. And that, somewhere in that process, she had carefully built a case against her husband, knowing she wouldn't live to see it used. The jury didn't believe it. They deliberated for less than 1 day. On February 1st, 2023, nearly 25 years after Julie died, the verdict came back. Guilty. At sentencing, Mark read a statement of his own. He asked the court for a chance at parole. He said he wanted to care for his children, for his aging parents. His sons didn't agree with each other.
Before we left for school.
And where was she?
She was in bed.
And was she still sick?
Yes, her breathing was raspy that morning, but she still, gave us a hug, told us she loved us, and before we left.
One asked the judge to make sure their father never walked free again. The other asked for mercy. 2 sons. One mother they barely remembered, and a judge who now had to decide which version of this family deserved to be believed. On April 14th, 2023, the judge handed down the sentence. Life without the possibility of parole. For the second time. The judge didn't soften it. This crime, she said, had been planned out for a long time. Intentional, researched, carried out for the purpose of evil. Before the sentence came down, Julie's brothers stood to speak. Paul Griffin read from a letter. He told the court he had written it 15 years earlier, after the first conviction, and never once needed to change a word of it. He asked for peace. Then came a statement from Douglas Jensen, Julie's younger son. Douglas was 3 years old when his mother died. He has no memories of her, none at all. He grew up inside a murder case that followed him through every year of his life. A father who said he was innocent. A family around him that mostly believed it. He said the case had shaped his identity since he was a child, whether he wanted it to or not. As an adult, he reconnected with an uncle on his mother's side. The uncle looked at him and said something Douglas hadn't expected. "You have her eyes." That was as close as Douglas ever got to knowing his mother. A sentence from a relative. A resemblance in the mirror he didn't know was there. Julie Jensen was 40 years old when she died. She had 2 sons. She called them her life's greatest love, her greatest accomplishment. She had trusted that letter to 2 people who kept their word, because somewhere inside her, she already knew something was coming. She wanted to be heard, even if she wasn't there to say it herself. It took 25 years, but she was heard. A jury heard her. A judge heard her. The people who loved her heard her. She had written the truth down before anyone else believed it. She had sealed it in an envelope and trusted the right people to carry it forward. That was the last thing Julie Jensen did. Long after she was gone, she made sure her voice was the one still standing in the room.